Hi, everyone. Scott Nicholson with the Judy Nicholson Kidney Cancer Foundation. And today we're talking clinical trials with Shay Sine. Hi, Shay. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing fantastic. I've been really excited about this. We love talking about clinical trials at the Judy Nicholson Foundation and how we can get involved with those and spread awareness about them, because they really are very important with the furthering of our education on different diseases and phasing those out so that we don't have to worry about them anymore. So real excited about today's talk. And I know you are involved with the Center for Information and Study on Clinical Research Participation, or CISCRP. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there?
Absolutely. So my name is Shalom, or Shay for short. Feel free to call me Shay. I am a project manager with CISCRP. We are the Center for Information and Study on Clinical Research Participation, which is sort of a mouthful, so we call ourselves CISCRP for short. CISCRP is dedicated to educating patients and the public about clinical research and clinical trials. And so that's one of the things that brings me here today.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and turn it over to you. We will have a question and answer session at the end. So if anyone does have questions throughout the conversation, you can type them into the chat box or just hold them till the end, and we'll be happy to get your questions answered before we wrap up today. So take it away, Shay.
Thanks. So hello again, everyone, and welcome to this session on including the patient voice in clinical trials and what clinical trials are and how they work. My name is Shalom, and I am I'm a project manager at CISCRP, or the Center for Information and Study on Clinical Research Participation. Again, at CISCRP, we are dedicated to educating and informing the public, patients, medical and research communities, and the media and policymakers as well about clinical research and the role each party plays in the process. So I want to thank again the Judy Nicholson Kidney Cancer Foundation for having me today. And today I will be talking about clinical trials, what they are and how they work. So most people don't understand what clinical research is all about. Some people might even be afraid of clinical research, or they might think that clinical research volunteers are treated like guinea pigs. Or they've heard news stories about clinical trials that have gone wrong, or they still remember past injustices when there were no protections in place for clinical research volunteers. Or like many of us, they have also heard stories more recently in the news about clinical trials for COVID-19 vaccines, and they're starting to wonder what clinical trials are all about and how they work. That's why at CISCRP, we believe in education before participation. We think that the more people understand about clinical research, the more they'll appreciate those who are research volunteers and feel empowered to make decisions about their health. So first, I want to show you a short video that gives a brief overview of clinical research. And I'm going to go ahead and play the video, and Scott, feel free to jump in if the sound isn't coming through or if there are any technical difficulties.
People around the world are becoming more aware of new therapies that are being developed. These therapies, such as drugs and vaccines, are developed through clinical trials. All clinical trials begin with a question that scientists, including doctors and disease experts, want to answer. To do this, scientists prepare a development plan based on early studies done in the lab. Next, researchers submit a request to regulatory and government agencies, like the US Food and Drug Administration and the European Medicines Agency, to begin testing a new therapy in people. Once this request is approved, researchers seek volunteers to participate in clinical trials. The success of these trials depends on including a diverse group of people representative of those who may be treated by the new therapy if it is approved for use. There are 4 phases of clinical trials. During phase 1, a new therapy is given to a small group of participants. The goals are to check the safety, find a safe dose, and track any medical problems. During phase 2, researchers check the therapy's safety and how it works in participants with a specific disease or condition. During phase 3, researchers check the therapy's safety and how well it works in a larger group of people with the specific medical condition. Phase 4 trials happen after a therapy has been approved and made available to the public. Researchers look at how the therapy works in the real world and its long-term effects. This whole process could take over 8 years, and vaccine development typically takes even longer because there are more safety tests. This development process is important because it's the best way to ensure that the safest, most effective therapies reach the public. Hi, my name is Dr. Jonathan Jackson.
I'm going to go ahead and pause there, but
I'm the founder and
so as you saw in the video, clinical studies start with a question, like, for example, how well does a new drug work or not work? Is there a better way to treat a disease? How do genes affect illness, or does where people live change their health? What we learn from clinical research studies improves public health, and researchers can only answer these questions with the help of research volunteers. It's important to understand that being in a clinical trial is not the same as going to your doctor for care. So when you go to your doctor, he or she would give you a treatment that has already been tested and approved by the government. This is called routine or standard of care. This is the care that we know works for most people, and it's the care you would get if you went to the doctor for regular checkups or if you had a health problem. An example of usual care is a person breaking a bone and the doctor applying a cast. We know it works for most people. An example of a clinical trial would be checking whether a new drug keeps breast cancer from coming back, for example. So we know that we can't fully understand something by studying just one group of people. And we also know that things like being male or female, as well as age, race, and ethnic background, all affect the way that people respond to diseases and treatments. For example, Alzheimer's disease happens twice as often in women than men. Type 2 diabetes and asthma are more common in African Americans compared to those who are white. Hispanics, Asian, and white women are more likely to develop osteoporosis than other groups, and children respond differently to drugs than adults. So these are just a few examples of why it's important and why scientists need all different types of people to volunteer for research. Clinical trials can be sponsored by the government, academic medical centers, pharmaceutical companies, biotechnology companies, or medical device companies. SysGroup itself, we don't sponsor any studies, but we provide education to people about studies. Research involves a lot of people who do a lot of different things, and they're sort of like members of a sports team. And like members of a sports team, clinical trials have coaches, players, and officials, and each person has an important role to play. The principal investigator would be like the head coach. He or she is responsible for organizing and leading the study, as well as recording and studying the data. The PI also directs the team. Like a team manager, the principal investigator follows a playbook, which is called the study protocol. The protocol is a set of instructions that everyone in the game must follow. It's the plan for how the study will be carried out. The research staff members are like the assistant managers who help the principal investigator. The clinical research coordinator handles the day-to-day activity at the research site. He or she has easy access to the principal investigator and is the main contact for volunteers. So if you're participating in a clinical trial and you have questions about the trial or your health, you can ask the coordinator. Volunteer protections are in place, and these protections are like the referees of the game. Referees help protect the safety of volunteers by making sure that teams follow rules. For example, institutional review boards, or IRBs, review the study before it starts. The referees help keep study volunteers safe and make sure they are given all the information that they need during participation. The number and type of referees involved in a trial depends on the research being conducted. So now let's talk about the most important members of the team, which are the research volunteers. Volunteers are like the players on the field, and without them, research can't happen. We need all different types of people to participate in clinical research. You don't necessarily even need to be sick. A lot of research involves healthy volunteers too. Your friends and family may provide you a support system while you're taking part in a study. It's good to talk to your friends and family about the clinical study. And they can help you come up with questions to ask your doctor about the study, and they can also support you while you participate. In the end, it's your job to make the final decision if you would participate in the study. Everyone has the chance to participate in research. You just have to find the study that's right for you. Just like a football game, there are rules and not everyone can be on the field at the same time. The research team has a list of requirements for the participants, just like a coaching staff when they're drafting players. Both the coaches and the players have to know the game and agree to work together. So let's talk about eligibility first. So a 10-year-old, for example, would not be allowed to play on a pro football team. And the reason for that is that it would just be too dangerous. Just like in sports, clinical trials have eligibility criteria. These are guidelines that say who can and can't be in a study. Eligibility criteria protect people if a trial might be too risky for them. This helps researchers get results that are correct and mean something. If you're considering a trial, you have to be honest with the researchers about your health, and lying or hiding information to get into a trial could endanger your safety or ruin the study. So let's assume that the coaches say that you're eligible to play, or that you're eligible for the clinical trial. So what's next? The next question that you would have to ask yourself is, do I choose to play? Well, that depends. You can't necessarily say whether or not you would want to participate without understanding the rules of the game. What are your responsibilities as a player? How long would the game last? What are the risks and benefits of playing, and what do you get in exchange for playing? And just like in a game, the same questions can be applied to a clinical trial participation opportunity. And one of the best times to ask these questions and help decide whether you would want to participate is during the informed consent process. The informed consent process is designed to answer all these questions and is required by the FDA and IRB. This is one of the most important parts of research, and it's a term that you would hear a lot. Before any volunteer can participate in a trial, he or she must read, understand, and sign the informed consent form. This is a long form that lists your rights as a volunteer. It includes detailed facts about the trial, and it describes your job as a volunteer and any procedures or tests that you'll need to have. It will warn you about any known or unknown side effects of the study drug, and it describes the benefits of participating in the trial. By signing the form, you're saying that you understand the trial and you're agreeing to do what the study asks. The informed consent form is a complex document. The study staff should go through it carefully with you and answer all your questions. You should never feel rushed or pressured to sign the form. It's important to note too that the IRB can ask the researcher to translate the informed consent form to a language that the volunteer speaks. As a research volunteer, you have rights. You have the right to understand the purpose, benefits, risks, and side effects of the clinical trial. You have the right to ask any questions and discuss any concerns with the research staff at any time during the trial. And you have the right to full, complete, and clear answers. Most importantly, you have the right to quit the trial at any time for any reason. You're a volunteer and you're free to leave the trial if you choose to. If this is the case, the clinical research staff can help you do this safely. So I've talked a lot about clinical trials and what your rights and responsibilities would be as a volunteer, but I'm sure there's still a question that you might be struggling with: should I participate or not? Deciding to take part in a clinical trial is a personal decision, and what's right for the person that's sitting next to you might not be right for you. So in the next section of the presentation, I'd like to talk about some of the risks and benefits that you should consider and questions to ask before making your decision. So one thing that's good to know up front is the way that studies are designed generally. Scientists set up their studies so that their research will be fair. They also want their research to be accurate and unbiased. So in other words, they don't want their own ideas about what they think should happen in a trial to influence the results of the trial. To set up fair and unbiased studies, volunteers may be split into different study groups. This is usually done by chance using a computer program, and it's similar to a coin toss. The researcher and volunteer don't get to decide which group the volunteer will be in, and this is called a randomized study. Sometimes researchers will go a step further and blind a study. This means that the volunteer and researcher both do not know which treatment the volunteer is receiving. In some trials, researchers will use a placebo. A placebo looks like a medicine, but has no medicine in it. Sometimes the placebo is referred to as a sugar pill. What's interesting is that even though the placebo has no medicine in it, there are times when people who are taking a placebo improve or feel better during a trial, and this is called the placebo effect. As a clinical research volunteer, even if you are on the placebo, you will still be closely monitored. Deciding whether or not to participate in a clinical research trial is again an important and personal decision. Here are some of the reasons why people say they get involved in clinical research trials. Some people want to gain access to a brand new therapy or therapies that are not yet available on the market. Some people like the idea that they will be advancing science and helping others with their condition. And participating in a clinical trial is one great way to help advance science and help others with your same condition. The research staff will also observe your health closely throughout the trial, and some people find that this is one thing that they really like about participating as well. Some people also participate. One of the benefits of participating might be compensation. Some, but not all trials will pay for the volunteers' travel costs and pay you for your time and commitment. The amounts and compensation vary widely. At SysGroup, we think that getting paid should never be your only reason for volunteering, and that it's important to consider all of the risks and benefits of participation. All research involves risk because, again, we're asking a question and we don't know what will happen. Researchers do their best to ensure that you're safe, but there are no guarantees. You need to be comfortable with the risks that you might experience. Some examples are listed here. For example, there could be physical risks. You might not get better. There might be some undesirable side effects that make you feel uncomfortable. There might be emotional risks. For example, some clinical trials may ask you to take a quality of life survey to see how you're doing. And the questions can potentially be upsetting or cause distress. There may be a financial risk. There could be out-of-pocket expenses such as parking, childcare, and missing work that are important to consider as well. And there are also risks to privacy and confidentiality. So usually your health information is private, and when you agree to participate in research, you're giving permission for researchers to collect information about you. And so while this is the case, it's also very important to know that researchers must follow rules throughout that protect your privacy and your information throughout the study. It's important that all of your doctors know if you're in a clinical trial. The clinical trial participation will require your time and commitment, and volunteering takes time and effort. So be sure that you have the time to participate. If you don't, just let the study staff know that this is not a good time. You can always stop your participation and volunteer or help in other ways or in future research. I apologize. Go back a little bit. The clinical trial, additionally, one other thing to consider is that the clinical trial could end at any time. Even if you want to continue to participate, your doctor, the referees or IRB and regulatory agencies, or the company making the drug could stop the study. So be sure to ask these questions when you sign the consent form at the beginning. Many volunteers drop out of studies because they didn't fully understand what they were signing up for. In order to help fully understand the study before you participate, at SysGroup, we always say education before participation is very important. So for example, do your homework, learn about the trial and ask questions. Read all the information provided by the study staff, and you might even go online to research the treatment being studied. Take your time. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking a researcher to slow down or explain something using simpler words. Also ask questions. Talk about your concerns with the study staff, your doctor, and your friends and family. Bring a friend or family member to study visits so they can ask questions too. You can also try tape recording your visits or taking notes so that you can refer to the information later and follow up with questions when needed. If you decide to join a study, you should feel confident that you have made an informed choice, and you should feel comfortable that the trial staff will support you and answer all questions. If you're thinking about participating in a clinical trial, it's important to talk to your doctor, your friends and family, and the clinical trial team to make sure that the clinical trial is right for you. So here are some examples of questions to ask before you decide to participate. So for example, what's the purpose of the study? What are the risks and benefits? Who can I call with questions or concerns? How long will participation last? How many study visits will there be? Where is the clinical trial located? Do I have to switch doctors? And what will happen after my participation is over? So you may find that you have many more questions than this too, which is great. It's good to gather lots of information about the trial before you decide to participate. This diagram provides one way to think about this decision at every step, and just highlighting too that it's your decision at every step. So you would start by becoming aware of a certain study. You think that you're interested, so you would discuss it with your doctor. If you're still interested, you would then need to know all the details, and then you would talk to the research staff and find out whether you're eligible. If it sounds like something that's right for you, you can choose to sign the informed consent form. But even when you're taking part in the study, continue to ask questions and decide whether you choose to complete the study or not. Informed consent is an ongoing process, and it's not a one-time deal. So you can remember that today's presentation is an important first step, and now it's up to you to learn more about clinical trials. The best place to start is with your doctor. You can ask them if they know of any clinical trials that might be a good fit for you. You can also get information from your local research center, disease advocacy groups, medical journals, and conferences. And there's also some resources listed here that are on this slide for your reference that are great websites to go to as well. You can also talk to your doctor, the research site. You can also talk to your friends and family and help, maybe they can help find resources for you as well. So even if you can't participate in clinical trials, there are other ways to engage in the clinical research process. One way is to participate in observational studies. So these are studies which might ask you for your medical information, but will not ask you to take an investigational drug. Registries are similar in that they ask for your medical information, and registries tend to ask about your information over a long period of time. Observational studies and registries always have protections in place to keep your information confidential. These are some great ways to contribute to science and the treatments of diseases. Some patients also take part in advisory boards, which are groups of patients who meet to discuss the way that a trial is set up. They advise the team conducting the trial on what they might need to know about people living with a specific disease or condition. To get involved with an advisory board, consider asking your patient advocacy groups or local study clinics if they're looking for people on any advisory boards where you might be a good fit. Another way of getting involved is by attending and supporting awareness and educational events like the ones that you're in right now. So to close, research volunteers truly are medical heroes without whom medical science cannot move forward. I'd like to sincerely thank you for taking the time today to learn about the clinical research process, and I strongly encourage you to share what you've heard with your friends, family, and people throughout your community. And so on behalf of everyone at SysGroup, I'd like to say thank you to the millions of people who give the gift of participation in clinical trials each year. Thanks so much.
Wow, that's a lot of great information, Shay. Thank you so much for your presentation. You did such a good job going through it. I'm not sure we're going to have a lot of questions, but if we do get some questions, would you be happy to answer them for us? We reached out to you at a later time. Oh, we lost your sound for some reason. Let's see. There we go.
Unmute myself. Yes, I would be more than happy to answer any questions at any time if they come up.
Perfect. Well, Thank you so much for your presentation, Shay. If anyone missed any part of this this video, we will be sharing it on our social media and our website tomorrow. So feel free to check back at jnfkidneycancer.org, and we'll be happy to share the video there. Ian has a question for us. He says, I'm a Canadian citizen, and there are no relevant studies in Canada currently for my kidney cancer. What is required for a Canadian to participate in US trials?
That's a great question. I would say that it definitely will depend on the site. So I would say I would encourage you to look up trials that might be available, even if they're not in your country, and see if there's, and maybe also contact the site. They might be really looking for people and be more than happy to assist you with anything that you might need in order to participate in a trial internationally. So that's one possibility. So I would follow up with the site directly and see what they say, and hopefully they can help you with that.
All right. Well, if anyone does have questions, feel free to email us or leave comments on our social media pages. We'll be happy to get back to you. Ian says thank you, and thank you from the rest of the Judy Nicholson Foundation. Have a great day, everyone, and we look forward to talking with you again soon. Check out our website for upcoming kidney cancer conversations. Thanks, Shay. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.